welcome to an idiot-proof episode of QI for a quite interesting look at intelligence. Joining us tonight are some of the biggest brains of Britain, the discerning David Mitchell, the judicious Joe Brand, the perspicacious Phil Jupiters, the Alan Davis. And they're absolutely buzzing with intelligence. David goes. Joe goes. Phil goes. And Alan goes.
Pass.
Anyway, don't forget your nobody knows jokers. Would you dream of forgetting them?
Nobody knows.
Yes, in this series there is one question to which nobody knows the answer. Right, question one is pretty challenging, right? And very much the kind of thing that gets discussed by academics in the finest universities, so you may want to make notes. How do you get a goose interested in volleyball? Joe.
I like to reply with the question, how do you get anyone interested?
I believe the removal of clothes is part of the... isn't
That's
it?
beach volleyball, though, isn't it?
Yeah, no. Well, when I say in volleyball, really, I should be using an indefinite article. There's a great difference between a goose being interested in volleyball and a goose being interested in a volleyball.
Ah, make one out of goose food.
That would do... Oddly enough, you don't need to do that. If their natural egg is light blue and flecked with grey, scientists have found that you can make the eggs bigger and bigger and make them really bright blue with great big black polka dots, and they'll sit on those instead. In other words, there's no upper limit.
It's about the shape and the colour, not the size.
Yeah, it's a bit like us. We should eat enough food to keep ourselves alive, but we have no upper limit in the amount. We'll have another bar of chocolate and another one, and we end up looking like me. And we shouldn't.
Is that why you're wearing the Cadbury's livery?
Hoping for a freebie, as always. No, it is, evolutionarily speaking, the bigger the egg, the more likely it is to want to sit on it because it's more likely to be a healthy, larger chick.
They'll be thrilled. This is going to be the most amazing
Exactly,
goose ever.
that's the thing. And so you can literally go up inside, they'll sit on a volleyball, because that's a kind of flaw in nature, if you like. I have to say, we have to include ourselves in this, don't we? I mean, there are certain things we need, but we don't need in excess, like sugar and fat and sex, and yet we spend a lot of our time eating chocolates and doing things on the internet.
Sounds like my perfect holiday, that does. It's brilliant, doesn't it? Sugar, fat and sex, yes, please.
But we've got the awareness of that we do that.
We at least have the awareness.
The goose sitting on the volleyball isn't thinking, oh, this is a bit much. The world doesn't need giant geese.
You're right. We have the extra curse of consciousness that we are fools. They're just fools without knowing it. It's called supernormal stimuli, and it seems to exist in a lot of species, actually. Yeah. Anyway, geese like their eggs, the bigger the better. And they just don't know where to stop, which may seem stupid, but name an intelligent bird. Yes.
Me.
I was going to say Shirley Williams.
She is much more intelligent
Nonsense.
than I am.
I will
I've got to
definitely...
big myself up. No, I've got a very low IQ. No one else will.
I don't believe that for a second.
It's 83.
Oh, my God, you're barely human.
I don't think there are any intelligent birds. Their brains are so incredibly tiny.
Well...
Like an owl, for example. I know this is a thing. 65% of their skull is the eyes. The brain is virtually nothing.
Yes, you're right. It's very hard to judge intelligence in a bird. There are different ones. Can they count, is one, and certainly there are birds that can count. Cormorants can count to 8. You may say, no, hang on. It's because they're used by Chinese fishermen, and they will catch a fish and drop it on the boat, and then the eighth one, the eighth one they keep for themselves.
8.
That's mine. Yes.
Finished.
It's
9.
But the generally smartest group is not smart because they count, it's because they solve problems. And this group are the corvids, which is to say, do you know what it means?
Crows.
The crows, the ravens, the
jackdaws,
rooks, the
ravens,
jackdaws, the magpies. What's interesting is they can look at a problem. I've seen experiments where they've had, you know, a gate that's pulled up on a string which goes round a sort of pulley system, and they will look at it, and then they'll go straight to pull the right piece of string to raise the door. We've got film here, for example, of a crow, actually. This hasn't seen this hook at all, ever. It's its first time. It's working it out. It's seen that it's got a bent end. It's put it at the right end, and now it's pulling that out.
How bizarre.
It's quite extraordinary. It's there, and then it's got its food.
They do seem like the most evil of birds, don't
They're
they?
often considered creatures of ill omen, aren't they?
And
in Shakespeare, they're often used as
Yeah,
symbols.
but that's because you're just seeing them with Carmina Burana playing.
Yeah.
Now, if you imagine
Oh,
a crow...
You think I should get something else for my iPod?
Tijuana Taxi
Spanish
by
Flea.
Herb Albert.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
You see, that's a nice crow. Put a sombrero on it, take the edge off
No,
it.
but even if you had Carmina Burana and you were looking at a robin, you wouldn't think the robin was evil, would you?
I would.
Would you?
Yeah, dirty bastard.
Use your
Robin.
capital. Anyway, there are intelligent birds, it would seem, and in the crow family they display intelligence aplenty. Who first cracked the Enigma code? Yes.
Was it the Poles?
Top man! Absolutely right. Yeah, good song. Yep. There's a general feeling that we did all the work, but in fact it was a Pole in 1932, as early as that, who first cracked how an Enigma machine worked. But in the late 1930s, the Germans changed the way they worked, so that I think there was something like 364 billion possible settings each day to the daily code. Now, that's not something you could guess. But the first one to crack it in the beginning to see how it worked was a young Polish mathematician called Marian Rejewski. And if you ever go to Bletchley Park, and I do urge you to do so, there is a splendid statue to him, and...
Have they got a good shop there?
They have a very nice shop. They also have a museum of computing, which I know would excite you almost...
Oh, indeed.
Indeed, I can...
Already moist.
I mean, it is well established. The work on Enigma did do a great deal to hasten the end of the war. Eisenhower estimated that it shortened the war by 2 years, which is hundreds of thousands of lives. So it was an extraordinarily important thing that these boffins got together. But how do you think they were first brought together at Bletchley Park? What was the first move the government made to assemble the boffins?
Singles club.
It was almost that. It was a telegraph crossword competition. Especially fiendish telegraph crossword. And the winners were sent letters saying, you might be our kind of chap. But anyway, they then soon became aware that having people who knew that cart horse was an anagram of orchestra was not going to win them the war. They needed really great mathematical minds.
It's when the world changed, isn't it?
It's when the world changed.
It'll be fascinating conundrums
Yeah.
that the Nazis will set us.
But,
We'll have to find clues and follow them. No, you just need a supercomputer.
But fortunately, there was a man ready for it. It just happened to be that history had thrown up a quite brilliant mathematician called Alan Turing, who was at Cambridge at the time. There he is. He's considered the father of computing, one of the truly great men of his time. And you may remember Gordon Brown making an impassioned but far too late apology on behalf of the British government for his terrible death. He was persecuted for his homosexuality and chemically castrated and then committed suicide by eating a poisoned apple. And there are many to this day who believe that Apple computers named their apple with the bite out of it in honour of Alan Turing, the father of computing. And I was in a position to ask one of the founders, Steve Jobs, and he said it isn't true, but God, we wish it were. It's just a coincidence, but they're very proud that people think it might be, because he was a simply extraordinary man. But the real fiendish thing was not Enigma, it was called Lorentz. And for Lorentz was used between German High Command and Hitler himself, basically. And Lorentz was unbelievably difficult. And for that, Turing and his team built what really was the world's first computer. It was called Colossus. And it was way ahead of its time. It was quite extraordinary.
It was all a complete sort of national secret until
Totally.
very recently, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or quite recently.
Absolutely. There is Bletchley Park. And it is open to the public. I'm a big advocate for it, so I make no apology for banging its drum. It's a great place.
It's an interesting choice that we took as a nation, though, you know, during the Second World War, which was an expensive experience for us and left us bankrupt. But out of it, we had basically invented the computer, and we decided to make it a secret.
Yes.
Rather than, in any sense, attempting to monetize it.
Actually, we gave the secret of Colossus to the CIA.
Oh, superb.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I know.
That's
It
an
was-
excellent move.
It was.
No one will be needing that.
But there's a great memo, because there were a lot of people in the British government who thought, what are these people in faintly damp tweed with pipes and glasses doing, writing on bits of paper here? And there's quite a big budget. I mean, what are they doing? And Churchill had a look round, and the fellow explained to him what they were doing, and then there's a very famous memo in Churchill's hand that just says, give them what they want. It's fantastic, that, isn't it?
What can I just ask, and you may not be able to answer this, but what was the nature of the Enigma code? Was it mathematical or was
Yes. I mean, don't ask me to give you the precise details. I'm really no expert. But it was a purely physical, mechanical device, but it had so many different rotors that had so many different angles and positions that there were hundreds of billions of permutations. It was our job was to intercept or work out what the code word of the day was, and then we could translate the messages. It was all very odd. But they were very lazy. It relied on Germans making mistakes by using the names of their dogs and things. So a lot of intelligence was gathered about the people in naval intelligence in particular, about what their dogs, their girlfriends, their addresses and things like that, because it's a bit like passwords, you know.
I'm beginning to think that people will be able to hack into my John Lewis account now.
Not named after your
It's
dog,
ironic.
surely.
They invented a computer and finished the war early, but the cyber war being waged by China will be the death of all of us.
Yeah, there is some... You know, the worry about it is, I mean, I was speaking to a man at Los Alamos, which is where they developed the nuclear bomb, and obviously the science now goes in other directions. They said they had something like 1 million attacks an hour on their sort of cyber front-end security. And I said, well, hackers? And they said, no, nations. Well, let's be honest, one nation. And I was interviewing him on camera, and I said, would it rhyme with Biner? And he said it might well do. And I said, that's how many times they're battering on the doors of your security.
Well, they
said,
must do. They've got thousands of computers.
Absolutely, they're just slave...
Trying to work it out
I know.
24 hours a day.
And presumably we're attempting in our own befuddled way to do the same.
If we've got a ZX80 on it 24/7.
Except when Wimbledon's on.
Yeah, we've got a crow that can get a tiny bucket out of a Perspex stew. Take that, China.
Now, how long does the perfect job interview last? Yes, Joe.
How long does a blowjob take?
The extraordinary thing is, the answer is exactly what I got on my card. It's 12 seconds. You're absolutely right. Wow, very good. Yes, it does seem that 12 seconds is enough. And bizarrely, you don't even have to hear. You can see video of someone, and most people will agree, give him or her the job. After 12 seconds, the mind has been made up, it seems. There's something about the attitude, the confidence, or whatever it is, it's likely to come across in 12 seconds. And if it hasn't come across by then, it won't come across any more than that. So it would seem. Have you ever had applied for a job?
I've applied for loads of jobs.
Yeah.
Never got any of them.
You're here, aren't you?
Yeah, well, that's true. I
got
didn't
this
apply
one.
there. I slept with you,
Oh,
as you
that's
well
right.
know.
One of the best 12 seconds of my life.
Yeah, I've applied for loads of jobs and not got a lot of them. But, I mean, so much, I think, is to do with appearance, isn't it, as well? And as a fat person, you are pretty swiftly written off if there's a thin person in the offing.
Yeah.
Because that sort of thing makes a really big difference, I think.
It's true, but it's unspoken, and they would never dare admit it, would they? That's the problem.
Well, they told me a few times.
To employ you, but they've got a thin person. I understand.
What about you, Alan? What have you done before you went to comedy?
I never wanted to have a job.
Really?
In the event of an interview, wear flip-flops.
That's
You
brilliant.
will never be employed. When you go in, put your feet up on the desk, and they'll get the next person.
I think that's fair. Yeah, well, we have here a list of job interview questions that you shouldn't ask if you're on this side of the table, as it were, if we're the interviewing panel. You're not supposed to ask, are you a smoker? I don't know why. Are you originally from the UK? From the UK? Is a no.
Yeah, but if you're interviewing for a cowboy, that's...
I was going to say, it's not OK to say, are you originally from the UK? And I just screwed it up. Do you have children who will need to be looked after? You shouldn't ask.
In the event of a fire, will you stop working?
Do you plan to have children in future? You're not supposed to ask. And then, what are your weaknesses, is a common question, given no. The temptation, of course, is to attempt to subvert it by naming a weakness which is actually a strength. Oh, my trouble is I'm just a terrible perfectionist. You know, I just can't stop working at things until they're completely perfect.
I'm so punctual.
Yes. Well, my problem is I'm really nice. I think I'm too nice, you know. And that is transparent, so don't do that. So you're supposed to say one that is kind of not terrible. Like, I tend to get bogged down in details, but I'm making a real effort about that sort of
I'm
thing.
a terrible thief. I love other people's stuff.
I also can't concentrate. Oh, look, there's a squirrel.
What are your weaknesses? Heroin and masturbating, not necessarily in that order.
What are your strengths? No, here's another one. Don't say...
Odour. I've got a powerful odour. It only gets stronger as the day goes on.
You're still wearing your I don't want a bloody job hat, aren't you?
These feet stink by 4 o'clock.
Apparently, don't say I work well without supervision, which may seem good, but it sounds I resent management, is what you're saying. So say, I work equally well with or without supervision.
I relish working in a team.
Yes. Ooh, vomit worthy, isn't it? Don't say I'm confident, outgoing and natural leader. That sort of suggests I'm a reincarnation of Adolf Hitler. You better answer, I have good interpersonal skills. That's what it says here. If I met someone who said they had good interpersonal skills, I would take a rusty knife and I would just do that in their stomach. Until they bled to
the
death.
sentence, I have good interpersonal skills, it's kind of proof that you don't
Exactly.
You immediately annoyed the person you're talking to.
Howard saying, I'm comfortable taking instructions from idiots like you.
There are weird things, like the person interviewing might just fall asleep. And apparently the smart thing to do is to leave a note saying, I enjoyed meeting you.
Is it?
No, yeah, but
I
no,
would
like,
say that's an incredibly unassertive thing to do.
I agree. I just say, wake up, you lazy sod. This is my life we're talking about.
So you mustn't lick their face.
No, that would be good, yeah.
Well, imagine them waking up and you're there, just with your tongue on their nose.
See, I had a job in the civil service, loved that, for about 6 months, and they asked me completely the wrong question at interview, because if they'd said to me, are you likely in 3 months' time to get pissed in the club bar, go back to your desk, fall asleep, and then fall off your chair, I could have said yes, and they could have not given me the job, you see, but that was eventually what happened, and I got sacked, so...
So they stupidly didn't have a question for that?
They had the wrong question.
No one but themselves to blame.
No, absolutely.
Apparently they sometimes also ask questions like, you know, how many piano tuners are there in the UK? I don't know,
What?
It's supposed to test your initiative or your wit or something, and you give an answer, I don't know.
Will you be taking advantage of bringing your kestrel to work Thursday? That's all.
The whole thing sounds horrible, the world of job interviews. I don't know.
The thing that seems unfair to me is the number of people who are expected to pretend they care about jobs they don't care about. You should be allowed to say, look, I'm fulfilling my contract. You can't put in the contract, also you have to seem like you give a shit. I think that's expecting too much.
Yeah.
That's why I really like the fact that we live in a country with such poor customer service. I've got respect for that. You know? Okay, this is a horrible train, you're tearing tickets, of course you're in an awful mood.
Now that you've put it like that, I shall feel better about it. You're right. Why have a cheesy grin on your face if you are working in an awful supermarket?
Well, it's the sign either of a liar or a moron.
Yeah.
It's quite funny when people are rude in shops, isn't it? Yeah. It still takes a bit by surprise. My wife went to a shop today. They wanted to buy an ironing basket. An ironing basket? I've never heard of such a thing. I have no idea we would find something like that.
As far as I'm concerned, you've just put two words next to each other in a mad way.
Me and my mates would deliberately go to a Chinese restaurant in Wardour Street because they were so foul to you. And the best ever time we went there, we were actually moved mid-meal to a different floor of the restaurant. You gotta stand now. You gotta stand now. This table booked. I'm in the middle of my dinner. Oh, you got there. Army of waiters moved our meal completely upstairs. I was pissing myself. Fantastic.
Well, the fact is, job interviews only need to last 12 seconds, it seems. Of course, it helps to believe in yourself as well. How do you know if you're incompetent?
Is it because you did very badly at your last job, which involved organising a piss-up in a brewery?
You'd think that would be a hint, wouldn't you? No, there is a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is that if you're incompetent, you don't know it, because the thing that makes you incompetent means you don't realise what the competent thing is. So let's imagine you've got a rather mediocre doctor who hasn't diagnosed something that a smarter doctor would have done. The incompetent doctor doesn't know he's incompetent because he doesn't know what it is that he hasn't done. Do you see what I mean?
Doesn't he realise that when the patient dies, though?
Patients die anyway. It's only if some really smart doctor said, didn't you ask him if he had this? Then they go, oops. But the fact is they don't know they're incompetent. That's sort of what makes you incompetent. The fact is we don't know what we don't know.
So you're saying you can tell if you're incompetent if you're happy?
Basically.
Right.
Basically, that's right. There are incompetent people who I think you feel must know that they're incompetent. There were a couple of thieves in America, you'd be surprised to know, who disguised themselves thusly using magic markers. they thought they'd get away with that. That was in Iowa.
There's a look of realisation in their eyes.
All right.
And yes, we now realise this wouldn't have been sufficient.
Yes. In 1994, a 31-year-old plumber and part-time terrorist called Idsalid al-Jahalin entered the cinema Zalwa in al-Zarqa in Jordan with a bomb. It was showing X-rated films, which he disapproved. So he planted his bomb under a seat, but then carried away watching the film. And it exploded and took away both his legs.
The bomb?
Yes.
Thank God.
Isn't that excellent news? Anyway. Very strange. Now, would you like to see an ingenious interlude? I've been trying in this series to get better at these little chemistry experiments.
They're always my favourite bits.
They are fun. This is a speaker, as you can see. And this is corn flour mixed with water, such as you would buy in any high street corn flour shop or supermarket. Used as a thickening agent for...
It's not green, though.
No, we've made it green to make it stand out more. It has a particular property, this. It's a non-Newtonian fluid. It's very peculiar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it here. Gloopy, I think is the word there. And unlike most liquids, which change their viscosity according to their temperature, these change their viscosity according to pressure, action on them. And we hope that a little bit of sound, played by Ben, our sound man now, is going to cause...
Hello.
As you see, it's beginning to vibrate. But as it gets louder, the effect will get more, I hope, extraordinary. Oh, it's a wonderful feeling. I might be able to just give it a little bit of a tickle with a spoon. Oh, there we go. There you are. You can see it there. If you keep... Whoops, the whole stay... And you start to get, basically, little morphs making love with each other. Oh, there you go.
You have just screwed every stereo of every QI viewer.
Isn't that creepy?
Margaret, get the cornflower.
It's like little wavy green people. And they're all writhing and making love and it's kind of like...
Yeah, that's what
You're
say.
adding back.
Yeah, well, it looks
I think
like...
they're being burned alive.
Some of them are waving.
Help me, I'm drowning!
Isn't it extraordinary? And all of that is water and corn flour. It's quite amazing.
What?
Yeah, it's the actual action, it's the vibrations, the physical effect that changes the viscosity. And they will
Let's
carry
all
on.
gather round.
They climb out. It actually looks as if they're trying to climb out, don't they?
Yes.
It's rather beautiful.
That is fantastic.
Isn't it?
It's like a glimpse into hell, isn't it?
Yeah.
All the souls writhing
That's
around
exactly
and
it.
trying to
Yes,
escape.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's just what it looks like.
Maybe
yes.
it is.
It's
Souls
Dante's
in
stereo.
agony. Well, there we are, and then it goes quiet again. It settles back into liquid form. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Well, I've got cling film, but they've not furnished me with a wet wipe.
Oh, look at the look on it.
Yes.
Would you like a tissue?
Anyway, I was at work tonight and I've got
Oh,
green
thank
gunk
you.
all over my purple suit.
Yeah.
I look like Jack Nicholson. Anyway.
Oh, there we are. So there are various kinds of these non-Newtonian fluids, and they are working on a kind of liquid armour, which is a weird idea, but the higher the pressure of the bullet, the more solid the liquid will become.
How am I only seeing this for the first time tonight?
Isn't it exciting?
Why isn't every time I go around someone's house they playing dub reggae and getting the cornflower out?
I know. We know what to do next time. Now, what is this robot designed to do? Blimey, yes.
To overthrow the puny humans?
That's what most robots are
I
designed to
think
do, of course.
it's for hanging a jacket on.
It is.
Well, it's sort of... This is actually an iron shirt robot. It irons your shirt. You put on a shirt and it sort of puffs up and irons it. Gets rid of its creases.
It might be a replacement husband because it's just sitting there doing fuck all. You know.
That would be a good job. The fact is, you know, there was so much promise for robots and a lot of artificial intelligence research. And the fact is... Sorry, is it just this atmosphere? Are you thirsty? I could do with it. Can we have a drink? Thank you. I've got a friend here who's going to make me a drink.
It's not like Yo Sushi, is it?
No, no. Here we are.
This is for you.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Welcome to QI, Asimo.
Thank you, Stephen. It is great to be here.
Isn't he marvellous?
Here I am, brain the size of a planet. Opening doors.
So you're the most advanced humanoid robot on the planet, is that right?
That is what they tell me.
Why don't you show us what you can do?
I would love to.
Is he going to kill me?
Honestly, I promise you, you are going to be impressed. I mean, this is... but when it's this movement that is so simple to us. You know, they can do calculations we could never dream of doing, any computer. But this movement he's doing, he's going to go down a step, right? Just give him time.
If he falls
There
over,
goes.
that's 20 million quid up the swan, isn't it? Now he's going to do something that I think no one in this room will have ever seen, which is, I think, truly miraculous.
Studio audience killed by runaway robot.
No, he is going to run. I'd like you to run, Asimo, and this takes him a bit of time, but both feet will leave the ground, and he will run. Very good.
Oh!
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that incredible? Well done. Well done, Asimo. I think it's only fair that you get some points.
Thanks, but what I would really like is a dance with Joe.
I think that can be arranged.
He wouldn't say that if he'd met me.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Asimo. I'm married, sorry.
Well done, everybody.
Oh, and he's bowing.
Amazing.
I've
Thank
scored.
you. Thank you very much, Asimo. Goodbye, then.
What's the battery life on one of these?
There he goes.
You can't
He's
help
round the
feeling
corner.
that he is heavily weaponised.
So why do you think he's called Asimo?
Well, can I just say, first of all, it's bloody depressing that even a robot can dance better than
I presume it's an acronym, is it? Or something?
No,
Asimo?
Is it a tribute to Isaac Asimov?
Well, no, that's what a lot of people assume. In fact, it's a coincidence. It comes from the Japanese asi means feet, and mo is short for movement. It's big. They're most proud, as you can see why, of his extraordinary ability. I mean, the amount of technology that goes into getting a machine that can walk bipedally like that and run. We saw him run.
I mean, we're at that
something.
stage now, which is actually amazing to watch. But how far are we now from Mechagodzilla?
That's what we need, isn't it?
That's a great, big, tall one, bigger than buildings, running around Tokyo.
Breathing fire as well, doesn't he?
I don't know that Mechagodzilla breathed fire as
doesn't
much
he?
as had missiles in his fists.
Oh, yes. Well, it's got to be one or the other, anyway.
I'm not absolutely sure about the voice, though, because to me it sounds a bit like Michael Jackson, which is a bit chilling.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And straight away, it'd be more reassuring if it was a mechanical voice. Sort of...
Like a more sort of, hello, Joe, you want to dance? Something like that.
Or maybe if it
Bernard
was
Manning.
like Stephen Hawking, it could talk to you like him.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it would have been more reassuring if its dancing was sort of like robotic dancing, you know, rather than trying to be human. I find its attempts to be human tragic.
Well, aren't you easily pleased?
What I'd like now is for it to be like Jerry Springer and the robot runs on and goes, who are you calling rubbish? And then big blokes in QI black T-shirts have to pull it off of it.
Get off me, you slags. Get off me, you slags. He was asking for it.
I want a DNA test.
At the moment, he can recognise people, objects and gestures. Obviously, has cameras in there. He can calculate distances and the direction of movement of several objects and create flexible routes to a destination. He can also hear and speak to a certain extent, as we heard. He can currently understand about 50 different calls and greetings, as well as 30 different commands, and can react to them accordingly. There's a long way to go, but nonetheless, I was bloody impressed, and so we say thank you very much to Asimo and his handlers. Thank you. That brings us to the all-too-human world of general ignorance. So fingers on buzzers, if you please. How many piano tuners are there in the UK? Is the right answer. You're good at that. Yes. It's a very strange thing. But even the British Association of Piano Tuners has no idea how many piano tuners. They think there's somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 is their guess.
Really? That's really a very wide gap.
It is a very wide gap. They just don't know. I mean, I suppose you could try and work out. You could look in the yellow pages and you could count if people use yellow
What about the
pages anymore.
census? Don't people have to put what their job is in the census?
Yes, but a piano tuner is very often, it's a kind of moonlighty job. You don't necessarily, you're not necessarily a full-time one.
I like the idea that the part-time masturbating terrorist was also a piano tuner as well. And his many other jobs.
Indeed, indeed, and a dental technician.
Also delivered the Baghdad Exchange and Mark.
Yes. On a clock face, how many times per day do the two hands overlap?
This is definitely a question to avoid answering at all costs.
I mean, isn't it not every hour? Surely, so 24 to 12 times?
Well, you'd think it would be 24. You'd think it would, until you reason thusly, that the first time it overlaps is at 12 o'clock.
And then at 1:05 and 2 and
Yes,
3:15.
you lose an hour,
You
lose one
2
in
hours,
12.
In fact, we can show it speeded up, and you can see, you can count. So it starts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 15, 16, 17, 18.
I feel like I'm getting older.
22 is the answer, yeah. And you can do the math. As much as the hour hand moves forward to the 1, it takes the minute hand a little more than 65 minutes to catch up with it, not 60. And there are 1,440 minutes in the day. Divided by 65 equals 22, and the tiny bit. So that's 22 overlaps a day. There, you look pleased.
Can I just say, I used to think I was intelligent, but I'm not. Obviously.
Oh, you are. It's one of those things.
That at all.
But you can make up for it by telling us where the biggest clock face in Britain is.
Is it going to be in a public place like a railway
Is
station?
it, no, is it one of those, like, garden ones? Is it a floral?
No, it's not. It's not far from here.
Palace of Westminster?
Oh, no, I'm afraid it's not the Palace of Westminster, no. It's not what is commonly called Big Ben or St Stephen's Tower. It's not that one, though that is a jolly big one. That's 23 foot in diameter. The one we're after is, I won't say opposite it, because it's on the same...
Is it the wheel, the Millennium Wheel? Does that get used?
No, that doesn't go as a clock. It's opposite the Millennium Wheel, virtually. I mean, it's...
Oh, the Shell building?
The Shellmex building on the Strand. Absolutely right. It's now the headquarters of Penguin, the publishers. There it is. Oh, yeah. It's rather splendid. It's the biggest clock face in Britain. The second biggest after that is actually not in London at all. It's the Royal Liver Building clock, which is also slightly bigger than what we'll call for convenience.
Dancing.
Big Ben.
Masking.
Yeah, that's it, the Liver Building there.
Hey.
Yeah, hey. Hey. Now then. So, the hands on a clock, anyway, overlap 22 times a day. When was time immemorial?
The Simpsons. The time before the Simpsons started.
Yes, I suppose that we can.
I don't really understand what time immemorial means.
What it means is if you say, for example, if you can prove in a court of law, say, that you've been grazing your sheep on a piece of common land since time immemorial, that means that you don't have to re-justify your right to do it. That it's a practice that is established and it's been done since time immemorial.
Does it literally mean forever?
Well, no, it doesn't. It actually specifically originally meant the 6th of July, 1189. Which
There must have been a lot of excitement in the run-up to that. Time immemorial tomorrow. So at last we can get things sorted. Because whatever's happening tomorrow, we stick to.
It was the day of the coronation of a particular sovereign in our country.
Richard the First.
You read history, and that's damn good. It shows that wasn't a wasted education. It was indeed Richard I who was crowned in 1189. And for some reason, it was decided then that the first Statute of Westminster, which was a few years after his reign, it defined his reign as the limit of legal memory.
Did they have to raise such an army just to catch those 2 seagulls? There they are!
After them, men!
They've been flying since time immemorial! The one on the right saying, I can't believe we're doing all this for those 2 poxy seagulls.
Do you think the French, when they saw that lot coming towards them, thought, oh, my God, it's the Red Cross people. Try and not meet their eye. Try and not meet their eye. Sorry, mate, I've got to go. I can't stop.
Now, what is the brakeman's job during a bobsleigh race?
Oh, he puts the brakes on.
Oh, now, Joe, you know better than that.
I'm just trying to move us on.
No, he's the last one to jump on. He's the one who gives it the biggest impulse. He's the strongest, usually. He's the one who gets it really accelerating. You're not allowed to brake during the race, because you can really ruin the smooth surface of the ice. There are other versions that are done on bobsleigh courses. There's luging. What does luging involve?
Going down on a tea tray.
Yeah, that's right. And in which direction, as it were?
First.
Feet first is luging. And then what's the other one where you're head first?
Suicide.
Yeah, you'd think. The cresta run is a skeleton, which is where you're head first and you slide down at incredible speed. And there was a time in the late 19th century when the fastest humans on the planet were people who did the cresta run. There was no... until the invention of the aeroplane. But I've got a supplementary question which might help you get some points again. Can you remember which Caribbean country surprisingly came 29th in the 88? Yes.
Jamaica.
Oh, dear. No, I'm afraid Jamaica came 30th. The surprising thing is there was another Caribbean country about which they didn't make a film. The film, as you see, there's John Candy, was
was Cool Runnings.
Cool Runnings, a fine, fine film. But for some reason, they decided that the heroic achievement of the Dutch Lesser Antilles team was not worthy of a film. It just wasn't as cool as Jamaica. They don't have a Bob Marley figure, I suppose.
But also, they've not got a catchy name for their country. It's confusing because it's got the nationality of a different country in it.
And it's lesser.
Yeah.
I mean, Dutch Lesser Antilles. In fact, bizarrely, you should say that because it no longer exists. The Netherlands Antilles went their separate ways, and it ceased to exist in 2010. And its national anthem, while it did exist, was called Anthem Without a Title.
Because the title of our country is so poor, we can't trust ourselves to think of another one. We'd probably call it French Song or something.
Oh, it's terribly sad. Anyway, yeah, so that was the story of the Dutch Lesser Antilles and their famous bobsleigh team that came 29th in the '88 Winter Olympics. That brings us to the end of this QI-IQ test. So hand in your papers and I'll tally up the scores, and oh my goodness me. Well, it's very exciting, actually. Top of the class, with 4 points, is David Mitchell. In second place, with -4, is Phil Jupiters. And in third place, with -8, is Joe Brand. In clear last place with -16 is Alan Davis. But the clear winner this week with an extraordinary 32 points is the magnificent Asimo! So it's good night from David, Phil, Joe, Alan, and not forgetting, of course, Asimo and me. And there's just time for some breaking news. I want to share with you the cover story of a recent National Geographic magazine, which is about the recreation by archaeologists at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. It's the oldest temple in the world. In fact, some people think it's the oldest building in the world that isn't a shed or a hut. It's 11,600 years old. And what excites me is that it looks like this. Does it remind you of anything? Good night. On that bombshell, good night.
Only Connect is here on BBC HD at 8:30 on Monday, and it's the series grand final. Don't miss that. Next tonight, though, there's drama coming up with Pan Am.